In Tech Talks, a podcast brought to you by Interval Technologies.
All right, buckle up everyone, because today we're diving headfirst into the world of cybersecurity and data privacy.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about those digital fortresses, those secret codes everyone hears about,
Right?
and how to navigate this wild west that is the internet without getting totally lost. No jargon today, I promise.
Sounds good.
We've got some fascinating research and reports to unpack for you all,
Okay.
including some really cool insights from, have you heard of Interval Technologies?
Yes, absolutely.
They live and breathe this stuff, so I
Yeah.
think we're going to have some serious aha moments today.
Looking forward to it.
But first things first, why should you even care about all of this?
Right?
Well, think about it. Your online banking,
Yeah.
your social media, even your smart refrigerator probably. It's all connected these days.
It really is.
And where there's connection, there's always the potential for somebody to want to exploit it.
What's fascinating to me is how much we rely on this digital world without always even thinking about the risks. It's like building a house on a foundation you haven't inspected yet.
Exactly. So today, we're inspecting that foundation. We're going to break down exactly what cybersecurity and data privacy even mean, why they're more critical than ever, and what you can actually do about it, both at work and in your personal life.
Yeah, that's the key, isn't it? What can we do?
Right.
So many people I talk to think cybersecurity is just about stopping hackers.
Right.
But it's so much bigger than that. It's about protecting your digital assets, your information, your finances, your identity from a whole range of threats.
Okay, so let's break that down a bit. When you say digital assets, what are we talking about? What's an example of a digital asset?
Let's say you're running a small business.
Okay.
Your customer database is a digital asset.
Makes sense.
Your financial records,
Right.
even your website design. These are all digital assets, and they're all potentially vulnerable.
Right.
Cybersecurity is about putting those measures in place to protect those assets, sort of like installing an alarm system in your house.
Okay, so it's not just about having a strong password then.
No.
It's about having a whole system in place.
Exactly. And just like you wouldn't rely on just a single ZOC to protect your home,
Right.
effective cybersecurity requires this multi-layered approach.
Got it. Got it. Now, where does data privacy fit into all of this? It feels very closely related to cybersecurity.
It is, yeah. Think of cybersecurity as the fortress, and data privacy is how you treat the people inside that fortress.
Okay.
It's about handling personal information responsibly and ethically.
So it's not just about keeping that data safe from hackers, but using it in a way that respects people's privacy.
Precisely. And that is where things get really interesting, because now we're talking about laws and regulations, not just best practices.
Right.
Things like Law 1807, GDPR, that's the General Data Protection Regulation in Europe, CCPA, the California Consumer Privacy Act.
Alphabet soup.
I know, right? But they're all about setting these standards for how organizations collect, store, and use our data.
Okay, so no more shady practices of selling your browsing history to the highest bidder.
That's the idea.
Good.
These regulations give individuals much more control over their information.
Right.
They have the right to know what data is being collected, how it's being used, and even request to have it deleted.
Wow. That sounds like a huge win for consumers.
It is.
I imagine it adds a whole other layer of complexity for businesses to deal with, though.
Absolutely. And Interval Technologies talks about this a lot in their research. Organizations are facing this perfect storm of challenges.
Oh, no.
Cyber threats are constantly evolving. It's almost like hackers are always one step ahead.
That's like a digital arms race.
It really is. Then you have the issue of insider threats.
Oh, right.
Interval Technologies brings this up a lot. Even with the best security, sometimes it's an employee who can accidentally leave the door open, so to speak.
It's true. Yeah, that's kind of a chilling thought.
It is. And then to add fuel to the fire, there's a huge shortage of cybersecurity professionals out there who have the skills to manage all of this.
It sounds like organizations are trying to build a fortress in the middle of a hurricane.
That's a great way to put it. It's challenging, but it's not impossible. By understanding the essential components of cybersecurity and data privacy, both individuals and organizations can start to navigate this complex landscape much more effectively.
And that's what we're here to help you do today.
Yes.
We've laid the groundwork. Now let's explore those building blocks of a strong digital defense.
Let's do it.
Okay, so we've talked about the why of cybersecurity. Now let's get into the how. What are the essential parts of a strong digital defense? I'm picturing like some high-tech shield deflecting digital attacks left and right.
Ooh, I like the visual.
Right.
But it's really more like a system of defenses,
Okay.
where each layer is working together.
Right.
Kind of like how a bank will have those security cameras.
Right.
The guards, the vaults.
Right.
And even those die packs they put in with the cash, just in case.
Right. Okay, so multiple layers of protection. Where do we even start with something like that?
Let's start with maybe the most obvious one, network security.
Okay.
So imagine your network, right?
Okay.
All your devices, your data. Imagine that as a castle.
Okay.
Network security is that sturdy wall that's surrounding it, the first line of defense.
Okay, and what's guarding the gate to this castle? What's the big strong knight?
That would be your firewall.
The firewall.
Yeah, it's carefully checking the credentials of anyone who tries to enter your network, and it's blocking anything that looks suspicious.
So no unwanted visitors allowed. What else helps to secure this digital castle of ours?
Well, let's say you need to send a message to somebody outside the castle.
Right.
But you don't want anyone to intercept it. That's where VPNs come in.
VPNs.
Yes, virtual private networks.
Okay.
They create a secure tunnel for your data to travel through, kind of like those underground passages they had in medieval times.
Ooh, secret communication channels. I love it. Sneaky and effective. But what if something manages to slip past the firewall? Like they get over the wall somehow.
Well, that's where intrusion detection and prevention systems come into play.
Okay.
IDS for short.
Okay.
Think of these as guards that are patrolling the walls, constantly looking out for anything suspicious.
So they not only see what's happening, they can raise the alarm if something looks off.
Yeah, they can even be configured to automatically block malicious traffic.
Wow. So it's like those automated turrets you see in sci-fi movies.
Exactly.
Our castle is sounding pretty high-tech. But let's say someone does get their hands on some sensitive information. What then?
That's where our secret code language comes in. Encryption.
Encryption.
Specifically, SSL/TLS encryption.
Okay, remind me again what SSL/TLS stands for. I always mix those up.
Yeah, it stands for Secure Sockets, Layer Transport, Layer Security.
Okay.
Basically, it's a way to scramble data.
Okay.
So even if someone intercepts it, they can't read it without having the decryption key.
So it's like putting our message in a lockbox that only the recipient has a key for.
Exactly. And this is so important for things like online banking and e-commerce, where you're sending your credit card information and financial details.
Right. That makes sense. But we're kind of just talking about the network as a whole right now. What about protecting the individual devices, like our laptops or our smartphones?
That's a great point. That's where endpoint security comes in.
Endpoint security.
Think of each device as like a potential entry point for threats.
Okay, so if the network is the castle, each device is like a window or a door that needs its own security.
Exactly. And your first line of defense there is going to be your antivirus and your anti-malware software. They're like your device's immune system,
Right.
constantly scanning for and eliminating viruses and malware.
So they catch those nasty bugs before they can actually do any damage.
Precisely. And then we have EDR, which is endpoint detection and response. Think of this as like a security guard for your device. They're not just observing, they're also investigating and actively thwarting potential threats.
So if the antivirus is the first responder, EDR is like the detective who comes in to analyze the crime scene.
Exactly. And EDR solutions are so important these days because they can detect and respond to some of the most sophisticated threats that your traditional antivirus might miss completely.
Right.
They're constantly monitoring device activity. They're looking for anything, any suspicious patterns or behavior.
Okay, that's good to know. It's reassuring.
Yeah.
But just like our own personal safeties, even the best security system still needs regular maintenance.
Absolutely. And in the digital world, maintenance comes in the form of patching.
Patching.
You know, those software updates that we all get?
Yes. Install now or remind me later.
Exactly. Well, they often include security patches.
Okay.
And they fix vulnerabilities and weaknesses that attackers could use to get into your system.
So it's like we're reinforcing the walls of the castle.
Exactly.
Making sure there are no cracks for the attackers to slip through.
Exactly. And speaking of keeping our valuables safe, we can't forget about disk encryption.
Right, because even with all this other stuff, if somebody physically steals your laptop or your phone, then what?
That's right. Disk encryption is like having a digital safe for all your data.
Okay.
It basically converts all your data into this unreadable format.
Oh.
And you need a specific key to decrypt it.
Okay.
So that means even if your device falls into the wrong hands, the data is still protected.
That's a relief. It's like having that secret code that only you know.
Exactly.
But we haven't even talked about the cloud yet.
Ooh, you're right. And that's a big one because more and more data is moving to the cloud these days.
It's like that saying, there's no place like the cloud, except for all of my data.
Right.
But how do you even begin to secure something as vast and intangible as the cloud?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's one that keeps cybersecurity experts up at night. But the good news is a lot of the same principles that we apply to traditional networks also apply in the cloud.
Okay.
You're still talking about layers of protection, like we were talking about with our digital castle.
Okay. So walk me through it. What are some of those key layers when we're talking about the cloud?
Well, just like you wouldn't let just anyone walk into your castle.
Right.
Identity and access management, or IAM, is crucial in the cloud. It's all about making sure that only authorized users have access to the data and resources that they need.
So it's like having different levels of clearance to enter the castle.
Exactly.
The knights guarding the treasure chamber probably shouldn't also have access to, like, the kitchen pantry or something like that.
Exactly. And that's what IAM helps to control.
Okay.
Who can see what? It prevents unauthorized access and potential breaches that way.
Okay.
And then, just like we were talking about encrypting data on our devices, data encryption is even more important in the cloud.
Especially since you're entrusting your data to a third party.
Exactly. And cloud encryption essentially scrambles your data, making it unreadable to anyone without the keys to unscramble it.
Okay, that makes me feel a little bit better.
Good.
But are there any specific challenges that come with cloud security that we haven't talked about yet? I mean, it's a whole other beast, isn't it?
It really is. And that's the thing about cybersecurity. This landscape is always changing.
Right.
So one of the emerging challenges that we're seeing in the cloud is something called shadow IT.
Shadow IT, that sounds ominous, like something out of a spy thriller.
It really does.
What's that?
It refers to cloud services that employees or departments might be using without the IT department even knowing about it.
So it's like someone's building a secret tunnel into the castle.
Yes.
Without telling the guards.
Exactly. And it's a huge security risk because these unauthorized services may not have the same level of protection as the official ones.
That's a good point, yeah. It's a good reminder that cybersecurity is just as much about people and processes as it is about technology, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
And speaking of people, let's talk about maybe the most important aspect of cybersecurity, which is the human element.
Because even if you have the most secure castle in the world, all it takes is one sleepy guard to leave the gate open.
That's often the case, unfortunately. Human error is one of the leading causes of these security breaches that we see.
It's true.
Think about phishing scams, for example.
Oh, right.
It's emails that try to trick you into giving up your password or clicking on a malicious link.
Right.
They really prey on our trust and that tendency to just click first and think later.
It's true. So how do you defend against those things?
Education is key.
Education.
It's about training employees to be aware of those threats and know how to spot them and what to do if they encounter one.
So you have to teach your castle guards how to recognize a fake knight in shining armor.
Exactly. And it's not just phishing. It's about creating this culture of security awareness.
Okay.
Where employees understand the importance of having those strong passwords.
Right.
Being careful about what they download. Reporting anything that looks even slightly off.
So everyone who lives in the castle has to sort of be a responsible citizen.
Exactly. And that brings us to another crucial aspect of cybersecurity, which is incident response.
Okay, so let's say, despite our best efforts, a breach does occur. What happens then?
Well, that's where having a well-rehearsed incident response plan is absolutely essential.
Okay.
It's like having a fire drill. You want to make sure everyone knows exactly what to do in case of an emergency.
So not panic, but follow a procedure.
Exactly. A good incident response plan will outline steps like isolating any affected systems,
Right.
figuring out what caused the breach, and of course, notifying the appropriate people.
And I'm guessing speed is key.
Oh, absolutely. The faster
Yeah.
you can detect and respond to a breach, the less damage it's going to do.
So it's like putting out a fire. The quicker you act, the less it's able to spread.
Exactly. And just like that fire drill, it's important to regularly test your plan.
Oh.
Make sure it's up to date. Make sure everybody knows what they're doing.
So we've covered a lot of ground, from the basics of cybersecurity and data privacy, all the way to employee training and incident response. What are some of the key takeaways you really want our listeners to remember today?
I think, most importantly, cybersecurity and data privacy, they're not one-time events.
Right.
They're ongoing processes.
Right.
It's all about staying vigilant, adapting to new threats, and constantly working to improve those defenses.
Constantly reinforcing those castle walls.
Exactly. And just like you wouldn't leave your physical home unprotected, you shouldn't neglect your digital security either.
That's a great point. So be proactive, be aware, and be prepared.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Excellent. A huge thank you to our expert for joining us today and sharing all of these incredible insights. This has been really helpful.
My pleasure.
And to our listeners, we hope this deep dive has left you feeling empowered and ready to take control of your own digital security. Remember, staying safe online is a team effort. We're all in this together. Until next time, stay curious and stay secure.
In Tech Talk, a podcast brought to you by Interval Technology.